A stunning offseason from GM Howie Roseman and elite defense have rightfully received plenty of praise for their roles in the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl 59 victory. But let's not forget about the offense. A 2,000-yard season from Saquon Barkley, an elite offensive line, and a proven big-game quarterback in Jalen Hurts make a strong case for this being one of the greatest offenses ever. But their journey to Super Bowl glory in 2024 started well before the season began. This is how the Philadelphia Eagles built the ultimate offense. Much to the frustration and boredom of many around the league, Howie Roseman is viewed as a perennial winner in the draft, and arguably his biggest hit came all the way back in 2020. The decision to select the boom-bust project of Jalen Hurts in the second round, despite having Carson Wentz locked and loaded as the team's starter, raised plenty of eyebrows at the time. However, when Wentz flopped his way through the 2020 season, producing a 3-8-1 record before getting benched, the move suddenly looked a fair bit smarter. The following draft in 2021, after Hurts had shown glimpses of potential as a rookie, Roseman prioritized supporting his young quarterback, drafting Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver Devontae Smith in round 1 and offensive lineman Landon Dickerson in round 2. Roseman didn't just wait around to get his guys though. It has since been revealed that the New York Giants were all in on Smith in that 2021 draft, so Roseman traded with the Dallas Cowboys of all teams to jump up one spot in front of the Giants, where he pinched the Bama receiver, frustrating his division rivals and forcing them to trade down in response. They eventually landed on Kadarius Toney as their first-round wide receiver. Ouch. The aggression to move up for Smith has paid off big time for Howie ever since, but it was another aggressive trade during the 2022 draft that he gets even more credit for. Good general managers recognize when to pounce and make bold moves for their team, and Roseman couldn't have hit much better than in his draft day trade for A.J. Brown during the 2022 draft. Titans general manager John Robinson didn't like the look of A.J. Brown's looming contract, so he solved the problem by trading him away to a very willing Howie Roseman before using his new 18th overall selection on Treylon Burks. We all know how that worked out for Tennessee. In contrast, Roseman welcomed Brown in with open arms and immediately signed him to a 4-year, $100 million contract. His decision was instantly vindicated when Brown hit a career-high 1,496 yards and 11 touchdowns, helping Jalen Hurts to career highs as well. More on that later. Learned behind Kelsey for a couple of years before taking over, whilst also gaining some experience at the right guard position in 2023. While Jurgens sat and learned throughout his rookie year, that offseason's other major offensive acquisition in A.J. Brown got to work immediately. He and Devontae Smith, along with the constantly improving offensive line, helped Jalen Hurts definitively silence the doubters and convince everyone that he was the man for the job. Hurts posted a career-high 3,701 passing yards and 22 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, also running for 760 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground, aided by the famously unstoppable tush push. Hurts' career-best play resulted in a trip to the Super Bowl, where the Eagles fell to Kansas City in a 38-35 thriller. For his efforts that year, Hurts came second in MVP voting and was named to the second-team All-Pro roster. Arguably the most important thing to emerge from that season, though, was Hurts' performance in the Super Bowl. Despite losing, Hurts delivered one of the best postseason performances by any NFL quarterback, contributing 374 total yards and 4 touchdowns. Over the years, many quarterbacks have stumbled on the playoff stage, but in his breakout season, Hurts had proven he was not someone who was going to shy away. Even so, fans would have to wait another year before seeing him back to his best. After initially thinking they had avoided it, the Super Bowl hangover hit late in 2023, triggering an almighty collapse from 10-1 to 11-6 before the team's embarrassing wildcard round exit to the underdog Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In response, Philly sent their coordinators packing and brought in the far more experienced Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore to partner up with Nick Sirianni, filling the defensive and offensive coordinator roles respectively. Both men inherited units that were disheartened and frustrated at the mess of the previous season, lacking leadership with locker room rifts playing far too big a part in proceedings. Nevertheless, the foundations laid by Howie Roseman's elite roster building meant that the external mess didn't run as deep as it could have in other locker rooms. It was the defense that struggled the most in 2023 and therefore received the most attention in the 2024 offseason, which I covered in last week's video on my channel. On offense, I think you can guess where we'll start. Just like with A.J. Brown in 2022, Saquon Barkley surprisingly became available after the Giants GM Joe Schoen balked at his price tag. And just as he did with Brown, Roseman seized the opportunity. While spending big on running backs was going out of fashion, Roseman recognized the star player in question was absolutely worthy of the price tag, bringing in Barkley as a free agent to give his offense what he believed was the missing piece. Offensive lineman Mekhi Becton was another free agent signing after an underwhelming first stint with the New York Jets, and Howie also inked A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to 3-year extensions, keeping his guys happy and getting the deals done early. Smart business indeed. It was a very promising offseason of work by Howie Roseman in the Eagles front office, but the not-so-distant memory of the 2023 collapse still lingered. On top of that, Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce both called it a day during the 2024 offseason, meaning the Eagles were heading into the new campaign without two stalwarts of the offensive and defensive lines, with 25 years of experience between them. Thankfully, it didn't take long for Howie Roseman to see returns on his offseason work. In the regular season opener in Brazil against Green Bay, free agent pickup Zach Bond was awesome on defense, and Saquon Barkley treated fans to a hat-trick of touchdowns on his debut. Jalen Hurts also enjoyed 278 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Cam Jurgens slotted in to replace Jason Kelce and overcame an early miscue to concede no sacks and just one pressure in a very promising 34-29 win. 2 losses in the next 3 games looked ominous though, sending the team into their early bye week with a 2-2 record. Not even the most optimistic Eagles fan was prepared for what would happen next though. Having knocked off the rust, Philly went on a sublime 10-game win streak after the bye, contributing to a final record of 14-3, which was good enough to win the division and earn them the 2nd seed in the NFC. With Jurgens holding his own at center, Becton thriving at guard, and Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, and Lane Johnson all continuing to play at a high level, Philly benefited from having one of the very best offensive lines in the NFL in 2024. As a result, fans were treated to an insane season from Saquon Barkley. Everyone knew the former 2nd overall pick had talent for days, but a frustrating few years behind a woeful New York Giants offensive line meant we never got to see it properly unleashed. There were no such problems in Philly, as Barkley scorched his way to 2,005 yards and 13 touchdowns at a whopping 5.8 yards per carry, whilst adding 278 yards and 2 more scores through the air. The quality on display from Barkley all season long was jaw-dropping, with a superstar running back setting 3 NFL records and 6 franchise records when it was all said and done. With Barkley running the show, less emphasis was placed on the passing game, but all the major players still did what they needed to do. Hurts protected the ball well, completing a career-high 68.7% of his passes for 2,903 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, while adding 630 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. In doing so, he became the first quarterback in NFL history to have 4 consecutive seasons with double-digit rushing touchdowns. The combination of Barkley and Hurts was simply too much to handle, with their 179.3 rushing yards per game ranking 2nd in the NFL, 25 yards per game more than Washington in 2nd place. Brown and Smith both saw their numbers decline, as expected, but 1,079 for AJ and 833 for Devontae isn't exactly something to be ashamed of, with 15 touchdowns between them. Nevertheless, the lack of passing yardage became a target for those in the media, particularly during the playoffs. A 22-10 wildcard win over Green Bay and a 28-22 win over the LA Rams in the divisional round had Philly marching to a conference championship game. But all anyone wanted to talk about was how much of a liability Jalen Hurts was. Across those 2 games, Hurts completed 68.3% of his passes for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, while adding 106 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Yeah, there were some rough passes in there, and the numbers aren't exciting. But playoff football isn't meant to be easy, and Hurts didn't turn the ball over once, brilliantly playing into his team's strengths. Those strengths were elite defense and, of course, dominant running, with Saquon Barkley racking up 324 yards and 2 touchdowns over those first 2 playoff outings, further vindicating Roseman's decision to pay up for the running back in an era where high-paid running backs are going out of fashion. This set up an all-NFC East championship affair between the Washington Commanders and Philadelphia Eagles. While Philly entered the game as favorites, the Commanders were a trendy underdog pick, with many pointing to Hurts' low statistical output as a reason why. What they weren't factoring in, however, is that Hurts is an ultimate big-game quarterback, absolutely ready to bring his best now that the pressure was ratcheted up. With a trip to the Super Bowl on the line, Hurts delivered his best football of the 2024 season, completing 71.4% of his passes for 246 yards and 1 touchdown through the air, whilst also punching in 3 short touchdowns on the ground. Barkley pounded in 3 rushing touchdowns of his own before giving way to rookie Will Shipley, who notched 77 yards and a score for himself, giving the Eagles a postseason record 7 rushing touchdowns on the day. The stunning 55-23 result was the ultimate team effort, showing that the Philadelphia Eagles were now perfectly tuned up for their trip to New Orleans, where they would face the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. KC, led by Patrick Mahomes, were on a mission to complete the three-peat journey that had begun 2 years earlier with their win over Philadelphia in Super Bowl 57. They entered as slight favorites, but left embarrassed as Philadelphia's defense swarmed them. The matchup in the trenches was as one-sided as they come, giving Mahomes and company absolutely no chance. Vic Fangio's unit have rightfully been showered with praise for that stunning performance, but Jalen Hurts was also at the peak of his powers that night. Yes, his defense made life easier for him, but Hurts was clinical on the Super Bowl stage. The ultimate big game quarterback completed 77.3% of his passes for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He also broke his own NFL record for rushing yards in a Super Bowl by a quarterback with 72 yards and a score. After being criticized all season long for his lack of involvement in the offense, Hurts took on one of the best defensive coordinators in NFL history in Steve Spagnuolo and was nearly perfect. Well protected by his offensive line, Hurts was more than willing to attack deep when the opportunity arose and was decisive and clinical when taking off as a scrambler. His stunning 46-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Smith early in the second half to essentially ice the game was fearless and perfectly executed, showcasing a quarterback who was at the top of his game in the biggest game of them all. The 40-22 final score doesn't offer up a fair reflection of the domination we saw in Super Bowl 59. On a day when Saquon Barkley was mostly bottled up, Jalen Hurts let rip, and his defense didn't give Patrick Mahomes an inch. The result was a Super Bowl win for Philadelphia, 2 years after their heartbreaking loss, and 1 year after an incredibly embarrassing collapse to close out the 2023 season. On both sides of the ball, they were truly elite, making this one of the best Super Bowl winning teams in NFL history. From the stifling secondary to the dominance in the trenches to the 2,000-yard rusher and the ultimate big game quarterback, the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles are absolutely one of the best teams ever. And with so many young stars on the roster, everyone else better watch out. Do you think this could be the start of a dynasty? Let me know in the comments.